Thank you so much for making the first step in learning about the New York City open data. We are joined by Emily, BetaNYC, Avi, Kiona, Gabby, and they are also fellows of BetaNYC's work with open data. The purpose of this session is to demystify and encourage the use of New York City open data. And what does that mean? This is an exciting day. By the end of the class, you'll be students of the city of open data.
We've been able to ramp these up. And so
a bit about New York City's BetaNYC. BetaNYC demystifies design, technology, and data to the point where anyone can use it, create it, and participate in decision-making process. In 2013, the BetaNYC community wrote the People's Roadmap to a Digital New York City. This document has helped produce several proposed pieces of legislation and 7 additional laws. So BetaNYC, on that website, you can also find YouTube trainings. BetaNYC also has broken down tutorial of the BoardStat, which is a tool that we'll be walking through today. You'll also find monthly newsletters on technology, data, and design. Then we have a community portal. Join us on Facebook, and we'd love to continue working with you in your work through open data. So our history, we started out as a meetup of civic technologists and good government that regularly came together. This created a foundation of community, advocates, hackers, and leaders. In 2012, helped usher in the open data law. In 2013, they developed the People's Roadmap in a citywide community co-authored process. We collaboratively wrote the People's Roadmap to the Digital New York City. Then 2013, Code for America launched, and 2014-15, Hack Nights and Community Building. 2015, BetaNYC was invited to do the Civic Innovation Fellowship, and data curriculum and classes were initiated. 2015 was the School of Data. 2016, you saw more tools being published. And then we come to 2019, September 2019, BetaNYC marks its 10th year anniversary by launching an ambitious plan to strengthen and grow the program for the next decade. The existence of the open data law in New York City is very unique. Many have this policy in place, but this is working in New York City formally. There have been about 10 that have succeeded it, from requiring plain language across datasets to geospatial information across datasets. These come from strong advocates, not only from Albany, but to Gale, Brewer.
So the talented and career pipeline is actually the pipeline that we're in and other Civic Fellows. So we went through a extensive 5 to 6 week period of us learning how to use the programs that you're actually going to be using today. Platforms that you're going to be using today, like BoardStat and the Open Data Platform. And from that, we're really understanding the questions that we want to learn from the government and how transparent it can be used.
Sure, I'll just pipe in really quickly if that's okay. It's just to say my name's Gabby, by the way. I'm a recent graduate of the Civic Innovation Fellowship, and what's really exciting about the work that this current cohort is doing is that after they've utilized their research to tools and conduct trainings through public engagement, they'll be able to use these awesome skills and potentially be brought back to BetaNYC as apprentices or in other capacities as well. So what's exciting about the work the fellows are doing is that they can be potentially brought back as apprentices, where they can use these skills for the greater public good and in other capacities as well. And I don't want to spend too much time because today is indeed about the fellows and open data ambassadors. And thanks for having me here today.
Thank you, everyone. So I'll jump in to our history and open data. So speaking of New York City government, it has a big job to do. The scale of NYC is overwhelming. 51% of the city lives or is near poverty. That is 6 million people. The 1.1 million kids in New York City schools would make up the 10th largest city in America. Close to 500,000 people living in public housing. It's the size of Atlanta. You have 700,000 people coming in and out of Grand Central Station, 18,000 miles of pavement and sidewalk, enough to cover and go and come back to Hawaii and across the Pacific and then end up in San Francisco. It's a lot of sidewalk. And BetaNYC actually developed a tool to look at the width of that sidewalk, which is really cool. So In the strong mayor form, the elected mayor is given almost total administrative authority and a clear wide range of political independence, with the power to appoint and dismiss department heads without council approval, and little or no public. In this system, the strong mayor prepares and administers the city budget, although the budget often must be approved by the council. Abuse in this form led to the development of the council manager form of local government and its adoption widely throughout the United States. So this is the structure of our municipal government. You'll see the comptroller, the borough presidents, the breakdown of community boards, and over 550 agencies. We have the public advocate, city council, district attorney. So every time a pothole is reported or fixed, there's an open data point generated. Every time a tree is planted, a parking ticket is issued, neighbor makes a noise complaint, a sidewalk is paved, dumpsters are picked up, there's a data point for that. Tree, ticket, sidewalk, dumpster, noise report. And back in 2009, New York City started off with the data mine. It was the first iteration of open data, a federal government information portal now moved into open data. The Manhattan Borough President, Gale Brewer, introduced the country's first municipal open data law in 2010 when she was a city council member. This legislation is actually made up of several interlocking laws that give it its weight. In many other cities, which makes open data so exciting, is more of a technical policy or executive order. In New York City law, it's the law. On March 7, 2012, former Mayor Bloomberg signs local law 11 of 2012, more commonly known as the Open Data Law, which amended the New York City's administrative code to mandate that all public data be made available on a single web portal by the end of 2018. In November 2015, January 2016, and December 2017, Mayor de Blasio approved several amendments to the Open Data Law. These laws, which include stronger requirements on data dictionaries, data retention, response timelines for public requests, those are the tickets that you make, and an extension of the open data mandate into perpetuity, help make it easier for New Yorkers to address city data online and anchor the city's transparency initiatives around open data. New York City Open Data Program is jointly administered by two city agencies, the Mayor Office of Data Analytics, also MODA, and the Department of Information Technology, known as DO IT. And they work with a network of 100 open data coordinators, staff at city agencies. So every agency has at least one open data coordinator. And with commissioners, they are responsible for identifying, structuring, documenting, and sharing New York City's open data. They support NYC open data with better tools, more resources, clear standards, and stronger connections with existing open data operations. As a result of the work of these open data coordinators, more than 3,000 different data sets, nearly 300 published in the last year, are available about virtually every facet of city life, and available more than 100.5 million people visited New York City open data in 2020, and more than half of those people coming from New York City, and the rest coming from across the US and around the world. The law is a big deal. Many other cities have followed suit. Every year, New York City celebrates the law with the birthday party to correspond with the New York School of Data. So let's talk about government, but what is open data, and how do we do these things together? Open data mostly refers to government data and is meant to make government more transparent and accountable to the public. In 2026, 64 million customer contacts were reported within the data set, a total of 200 million calls for information. So 311, you can either call in or you can create a ticket online. They're open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, accessible in over 175 languages. You can also use Skype, Twitter, Facebook to make these calls for data or information. 311. So BoardStat was designed with community boards and community boards in mind. BoardStat is a highly interactive tool for community boards that empowers users to discover issues and trends within their district's boundaries. BoardStat empowers board staff and members to gain timely insight into New York City 311 data and is furthering the long-standing goal of making government transparent, reactive, and moving beyond open data access so that it becomes more meaningful to use. Simply stated, BoardStats is a multi-page dashboard customized for each New York City borough. So within the 5 boroughs, you can select the one that you'd like to work with. So I'll post a link in the chat and you can follow through with me through this quick tutorial. So You can also find more tutorials and workshops to better understand how to use BoardStats and walk through specific data journeys by going to BetaNYC's stats homepage. BoardStat is a 311 dashboard customized for each community board built with the Manhattan community boards. Built for Manhattan community boards. Built in 2017 at the mayor's office with Gale, Brewer. So if you're all clicking that link into BoardStats, you'll be introduced to the landing page. We'll be working through a data journey looking into Manhattan. So here you can see how to filter information, and you'll find that rather than entering a zip code, which can be contentious, you'll enter a community board that you're working with. And you can either filter it, because there's so much information, by the complaint type. You might not know exactly how to define a complaint. There are dictionaries on this, and I'll post a link to that as we walk further into the training. So moving on, you can also see in this overview page, there's from top to bottom, you'll see that there is the community board. We're working with 12 Manhattan. Then the date range you can change based on your request or your interest. Then you'll find that you can also select the date of interest, the complaint types you'll find with descriptors to the right, and then the top 10 complaints with the bar graph, and then top 30 with the descripted addresses. So look up an address and pull up its entire 311 history service request. So here we're going to look at 525 West 69th West 169th Street, and the range will be from 2010 to into the future. Moving from left to right, you can find a beautiful tree map, which is the colored blocks tree map, and then that would show the top 10 complaints, then a line chart of the descriptors over the years, leading towards the bottom, 311 service data requests with unique keys. So that's that first column there, the unique ID, which is created for each individual ticket, and then the date created, the incident address, the complaint type. You'll notice that there are multiple ways of identifying a noise complaint, whether it comes from a resident or the sidewalk, the street, and then the descriptor and the agency that is being asked to follow through with this complaint or ticket, and the resolution descriptor. There's two different, you'll notice a spike in 2010 in terms of noise complaints. So that's when everybody was home, I believe, and yeah, everybody was home and worried about their neighbors quarantining and living so much in their little New York City, Manhattan apartments. I have a question, curious about the technical aspects behind the data storage backend.
So I can speak a little bit to this. So the data is stored the New York City Open Data Platform, and it comes in through a daily feed into this Power BI tool, this Microsoft tool. That's about all I can say about the technical aspects of the data and the back end. If there's anyone here from anyone else who would like to elaborate on that, go for it. But hopefully that Elliot answers some of your question.
If you're talking about the underlying data, and hi everyone, Zachary from the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics here. But if you're talking about the underlying data, and I think we're about to get to the raw data in a bit, it is stored in a variety of ways. As Emily mentioned, it is the last stop before it gets to open data is indeed the Socrata provider that the city contracts with to store all this information. I'm not exactly sure of the specific backend that they're using, but before it gets there, it is stored on a bunch of different city agency computers. And some of that data is stored in the cloud. Some of that data is stored on local servers. And it really depends agency to agency, since there are so many of them and so many different technical setups, and the data can be stored in different ways before it gets to open data.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'm excited that we have somebody from MODA here. I think, Zach, you're the main person working with open data, the open data ambassador for MODA.
I guess you could say that. I'm their open data coordinator and also help to run the open data program.
So then I'll move forward. We have then a toggle map where you can move through the specific complaints, so you can explore your district service requests in a map form along the range of variables at the top. Based on this, we're looking at heat and hot water, and this is the agency you'll notice is the Housing Preservations Department, and then you can zoom in and explore it based on that. If you want to switch community boards, there's also a list of how community boards are outlined in boundaries. Here we're going to look at the missing garbage collection, and you'll also see that the range for this has been broken down within a few months. And then you can also filter it based on the status. So whether you want to see if something was fulfilled, like a complaint that you made was fulfilled, you can toggle down to the status and look at only tickets that are still open or completed. So in this case, this map, we're going to look at the difference in homeless street conditions based on homeless persons assistance compared to homeless persons assistance. And unfortunately, there's a lot of information in this area. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information in this area, and you can toggle down, like I said, based on the complaint type with this beautiful red circle there. So there are so many different agencies that use open data. There are some limits to, I believe, like the information that's released, specifically like Housing Authority, I think is one of those agencies, but in that you can also find a list of all the agencies that create data sets and report with open data. And so you can filter by agency and also date. So this page represents the distribution of agencies and service request tickets. And sometimes you'll have different districts have different averages to and times to close a ticket. So say you have a pothole and in front of your street and you make a 311 complaints that this pothole is bursting your tire all the time. You're generally, in making that ticket, the agency will have 7 days to complete and follow up with that complaint, and then you can check the status here with 311 and BoardStats. Finally, we have page 8, which allows you to compare different complaint types and descriptors to each other. So here you can see that in 2020, there's a new complaint type, non-emergency police matters, social distancing, also known as social distancing. Orange is the noise and vehicle complaints. And then we have this large increase of gray. I guess I'll open this. Can anybody assume what might be the missing complaint type there? And in the past year, I was thinking maybe something with masks or businesses, but I feel like it's probably COVID related. And that's it.
Oh no, the answer was actually fireworks.
Fireworks.
In July, yeah.
Very cool. Okay, that is gray. How do we make that not like more of a detailed descriptor? I guess
would be put under like noise complaint, residential, probably.
Interesting. So before moving forward, do we have any other questions from the group? Everybody has a link to the slide deck. Okay, perfect. I'll continue. Now with BoardStat under our belt, let's do some analysis and visualization for the DIY style of Jakarta Open Data Portal. Oops. To be a really informed public, we don't want to rely on visualizations already out. Every visualization carries its own story and biases, so we want to make sure we know how to do this on our own. So if you walk with us through the New York City's Open Data Portal, you'll be brought to this page. You can sign in and create an account if you like to save data sets. It's definitely encouraged as you begin to filter and explore your own data. So we're going to start off with 311 data. You search 311 in the bar. First, we'll create our own login to make sure that we're sticking to our story. Okay, back here. When you search for data, you'll get back a list of results. For this exercise, we'll click the top one. 311 service requests from 2010 to present. So that's going to be a wealth of information. You can see that's also provided by Do It, as we were saying that they're the partner with MODA. And when you click on the dataset title, you'll be taken to an important About page. This will tell you the last date it was updated, which is important, and the frequency of its updates, the number of views as well. There's also a link to the dataset's data dictionary, a document meant to teach you what is in the data, how to navigate it. To get into the data itself, you'll click View Data in the upper right corner, so that blue button next to visualize. Oh my goodness. When you click the dataset, this is what data looks like on the portal. The dataset has over 41 different columns and over 24.5 million rows. 311 data is grouped into different complaint types. So yes, a lot of information. So exporting it, you definitely want to learn how to filter it, because with this wealth of information, your computer can't really even handle it. So we'll learn how to filter. If I can move, oh, here we go. So here you're seeing the 41 columns, 24.5 million rows. There are 446 different complaint types in New York City's 311. Here at the top are the 24 issues as they appear in Manhattan's Community Board 12. I believe that is true. We're learning 311 data. It's the most prevalent source of data. Maybe Moda would like to speak more on that, but it is also, I think, besides the transportation information, it's the most frequently updated. I'm not so sure how to speak on that. So filtering your data.
Danielle, we could speak to that question just a little bit more since you invited us to real briefly. Yeah, so Mark, 311 is it's a big data set, it's a popular data set, and it's complex. So it's very conducive to learning with, but it also really speaks to the people and to you in your own neighborhood, possibly. That's why we choose to workshop 311 data mostly.
So in filtering it, you'll be able to see more in depth the sort of complaints that are being made. Here we'll filter to Manhattan Community Board 12 and see there are over 733,000 complaints in data. So we're thinking about only looking at the Department of Sanitation, and we're gonna make it so that it's assigned to look at just information collected from December 1st. So here you'll find the unique key on the far right. So that's the individual ticket, the individual complaint, and then the date created. And then whether it was closed or not, you'll see the closing date there. And the third column and more illegal fireworks.
So when you file a complaint, you don't have to know the category yourself. You just have to know what you're complaining about or requesting a service request for, and the person on the other end will categorize it.
I assume that's not that easy because that's a lot of category and kind of find where does it fall into. There's a temptation to create more categories. It does not fall exactly into this one or that one. There's a potential to creep. That's why I was wondering, because that's a lot of categories.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And the categories continue to change and grow over time, like you're suggesting. One thing that since we started working on BoardStat like in 2015-ish, and one thing we came upon very quickly was that heating complaints, which are a big feature in 311 data, we were stumped. There was like a puzzle because we were like, wait, what's going on? We have no more complaints after 2015. And we're like, wait, is it no one struggling with heat and hot water issues anymore? But in fact, the nomenclature had changed. So heating complaints became named heat and hot water or heat/hot water. So there's all kinds of interesting sort of discrepancies like that in the data. And of course, with COVID, there have been new complaint types and social distancing came up. It was for some period of time, NYPD took care of social distancing issues, but then it switched to a different agency.
Just to add a little more context there, the categories are generally starting with the agencies. And yes, there are new agencies created, but it's not something that happens all that often. So that gives you like a large, broad category to search from. And then, yes, there have been, to Emily's point, a lot of tinier categories that have been added over the years, especially now with COVID, there's a bunch of new complaint types. But the way it generally maps is there's a subcategory, a category, and then an agency. So the agencies and the categories don't really change that much, which makes it a bit easier to understand what's there. But as I was saying before, there's actually a whole agency, I mentioned this in the chat, who's responsible for managing this. So they have staff who do research and figure out what the best way of communicating this would be.
Is there somebody guiding, let's say, specific roll-ups that you have subcategories rolling up into a higher,
correct,
and somebody guiding that?
Correct.
Or do you create your own roll-ups? Let's say if I'm a user of this file, I create my own roll-up. So is somebody guiding this?
There's a specific flow where the subcategories roll up to categories, roll up to agencies.
Okay. There's no above agencies. Let's say if I want to have a category for all New York, all 400 plus categories are maintained for all boroughs. So then if I want to roll up from 400 plus to fewer categories, let's say I just want to have 5 or 10, this is something we would have to do ourselves.
You could definitely filter and you could roll up to borough, which I think is one of the things that can be shown. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ways you could filter on your own, but generally the categorization stops at the agency level based on the sort of core functions of that agency and what sort of things they would be involved with. and what sort of complaints they would handle.
Hamid asks, I'm working at 311 where I take calls from customers of complaints they make. It's a huge job. We use a specific Microsoft software where we are able to search up the complaints the customers make. It's very interesting to know how all this data is stored in the program. I agree. I know that it sounds like there's at least one open data coordinator at every agency. So learning how they better use these complaints and publish that data is critical and amazing. That's a great question. Are there opportunities for the general public to volunteer or contribute to any ongoing open data projects? I think you're in the week of the fruition of the future projects of that sort. I'm going to share my screen one more time to show past projects and tools that you can use and that are continuously cleaned and reiterated. So another few tools that BetaNYC has created. So this is a great tool. So you can look up any data assistance requests. So if people are asking, so you can ask for specific data and then you can toggle through how that's being followed up, I believe. And then Just Fix It is a tenants' right organization. They use a lot of these tools with community boards. Sidewalk within New York City is a new project by BetaNYC in the past year. Oops. So I'm just going to show you one more time. Anybody have journeys that they want to work on if you're coming as like a journalist or data scientist specifically? NYC jobs. So maybe I can view data and then filter, see the job ID, the agency, whether it's external or an internal posting.
Hey, Danielle, could we, let's see, maybe we could filter this data instead of job ID. Could we change that to, if you go to where the job ID is? Yep. If you could change that to like, maybe if you hover over job ID, the little arrow next to it and pick a different field in the data. The arrow just to the, yep, that arrow. Yep. So let's pick, okay, agency, actually, we'd have to see what's in the data. Can you go down to that drop down again, maybe? Yeah, or just scroll through and see how agency is listed. Yep. New York City. Oh, let's see New York City Housing Authority. Yeah, let's see what that's all about. And because this uses like very structured information, Danielle has typed it as a normal human being would, but because it says agency is New York City Housing Authority, it would have to be all caps if we want to do it that way. So we could also say, I believe we could say contains, yep, or contains. If you do contains, I think that should work. And yeah, let's hit apply and see what happens. Oh yes, there we go. So now we've filtered our data to all the New York City Housing Authority NYC jobs. It's interesting. We have 139. But what is this? What is this data? Can you click on NYC jobs? Let's read a little bit about this. What if you go to
these are the current job openings that New York City has, the government.
So go to the about. Can Danielle, can you scroll over to the about? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's read about this. This data is like current job postings available. Wow.
So does anybody have any questions on how to navigate? I'll also open YouTube BoardStats and I'll post a link in the chat just to all these great tutorials that were made. It's from the 2018 version of BoardStats, so I think the pages might look different, but you get a good idea. So I'm posting a few links, data set by agency, how to submit a request for data if you don't see a set available for your work. I don't know if FOIL is the name of that, FOIL request. Can I ask the group, how do you want to work with open data now that you have like a breakthrough of what it looks like and how to access it? Any cool projects that you're looking to work on? I know somebody asked if we have projects. What interests you that you would want to use open data to collaborate with? I most recently use it for the K through 12. Right now, I work with geospatial sets, not as in-depth as I would like to, but it's just incredible how accessible everything is. Once you learn how to format the filter or export the data, it just is a wonderful tool to make challenges out of. Hackathons. I know in the past there was a hackathon to count all the trees in New York City. That seems really cool. Bike lanes as well.
Looks like Danielle, you turned someone on to the job openings data set. Someone's ready to dig into that.
Yeah, the number of homeless shelter beds. That's a big one. I wonder, a lot of homeless shelters are also closed. So I wonder if there's data that can reflect that. Maybe food drop-offs. Thank you, Kiana. Yeah, and then you can collaborate, compare data across different agencies. So I think like food insecurity, as well as with like housing, how many like gardens, community gardens are near public housing. You can compare location data with that. Thank you, Kiana. Is anybody a part of their community board? Now that we've worked with BoardStats. Very neat. Have you used any of the BoardStats platform to bring issues up to your community board? And while you're at it, I'm going to pull up BoardStats and look at CBS right now. See what the top complaints are for your district. 7. Okay, so I filtered it to community board. I believe that's how I do it. Manhattan 7. And I didn't enter any specifics on complaint type. Maybe I should select the range of the year. So I'm going to look at this in the past year, what's been going on, or March 2020. I'll do it to the future. So in the past year, top 10 complaints made seems to be noise, as everyone's living at home. Noise from the residents, and then the second would be from the street. So most people no one's out on the city anymore, city streets. Then heat and hot water complaints. So that's great to bring up to tenant boards. Just Fix It is a great community organization for tenants' rights. Illegal parking. I guess that would be maybe one of the lowest, as parking was also like delayed a lot this year, or like not delayed, but extended. The street is really construction for the most part. Yeah, first world problems. Non-emergency police matters. So that was social distancing is the pink non-emergency, non-compliance. With phased reopening, homeless persons assistance, 1,629 within the last year. It looks like we are at our time. Thank you so much for your patience in my presentation. I had some fun doing this last year, but doing it virtually is very different. So thank you so much for coming along for the ride. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a wonderful, warm, sunny day. That's how it is here in New York. So I'm very excited to get out into the sunlight, and I hope you can enjoy it as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kiana. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Avi.